Okay, Phoenix Force. Now, Phoenix Force, I was always, okay, let's put it this way. Back in the day, when I'm reading these things, when I'm a kid, man, and back in the 80s, um, I was always more a Phoenix Force kid than an Able Team kid. Simply because I think partly I always found them a little more interesting because there were more guys. There's like always like a 5-man team as opposed to a 3-man team. Um, their missions have a wider geographical scope. That helps a lot. Phoenix Force is all over the place. Sometimes they operate in Able Teams, Central and South America. Indeed, their first book took place in Argentina and Paraguay, but a lot of time Europe and Asia, though, and Africa, those tend to be their primary stomping grounds. But there is, of course, also domestic U.S. missions as well. For example, one where they've got to stop a bunch of these are the kind of books. A bunch of ninjas in the employ of the KGB from setting off meltdowns in multiple nuclear power plants in the U.S. And I can't believe what that is. That's oh man. It was alliterative. I want to say it's not Terror Tigers, but it's something like that. Almost a lot of these titles are alliterative to the point where it's just become kind of a convention of the genre. Anyway, Phoenix Force. Interesting for a couple of other reasons. So there's 5 guys initially. Yakov Katzenellenbogen, who is a former member of the Mossad, who had grown up in France during World War II, had been a resistance guy there. He's the oldest of the team, 55 when the books start. Raphael Enciso, or Enciso, I apologize if I'm screwing that up. And he had been part of the Bay of Pigs invasion. He had been captured during that and held, in El Principe prison by Fidel Castro's forces, tortured, eventually escapes back to the U.S. He's never really a formal member of any nation's military, but he's been like an insurance investigator and a bodyguard and a professional scuba diver and all that kind of stuff. Gary Manning, who initially has also never been a member of anyone's military. He starts off, he owns like a multinational security corporation. He's an electronics guy, an avid Canadian hunter. He is, sort of a self-taught sniper. So he fulfills that role on the team. Later on, Gary gets retconned to having been in the Canadian Army and its special forces and being assigned in Vietnam as an observer. Okay, this is also the same thing with the next guy, David McCarter, who is a former SAS commando who had participated, in the raid on the Iranian embassy in London. He also, during the 60s, had been assigned to Vietnam as an observer from the British Army, which is handy. And Keo O'Hara was the last guy out of the batch, and he had been with the Japanese Defense Force. He's the youngest guy on the team. He's in his 20s, a martial arts expert, including ninjutsu. So he's got all this ninja stuff, that he can do, but he doesn't have like a lot of formal combat experience at the time. So Phoenix Force is envisioned as like a foreign legion type outfit, as I said a little bit earlier. So none of them are native born, U.S. citizens, although eventually, Raphael was naturalized. He was Cuban by birth. Eventually, I think Yakov gets naturalized and holds like, I think he manages to go 3-way on it. I think he somehow he may retain his French citizenship. If not, he definitely has dual U.S. Israel citizenship. And then there's also a guy named, so after KO, here, spoiler alert, KO dies at some point, and he is replaced by Calvin James, who is the first native-born U.S. citizen. He had been a SEAL in Vietnam. He had gone to med school, but quit that to become a cop in San Francisco, where he eventually ends up on their SWAT team. And after Yakov leaves the team, basically just due to age, he is replaced by T.J. Hawkins, who had been a Ranger and a Delta Force member, in the first Afghani war that we fought in the 90s. But there are also a couple of guest Phoenix Force guys. So when somebody gets wounded, and can't participate in a mission. There's a couple of guys they call on. So Calvin knows a guy named John Trent, who is an actual ninja. He's of Japanese and American birth, but he is an actual ninja. He helps them out. And also, McCarter has a friend named Carl Hahn, who was with the West German anti-terrorist unit, GSG-9, and later the West German intelligence agency, the BND. And he comes on to help out every now and then. So, like Able Team, there are 51 Phoenix Force books, and then, of course, all the team-up stuff, and then they get folded in with Able Team into the Stony Man series of books. They tend to have sort of multi-book arcs, not necessarily in succession, but they sort of develop arch enemies in a way that Able Team doesn't. There is Trio, which is like a conglomeration of Asian organized crime syndicates. There's also a similar one of like South American drug gangs that get kind of jungled up. Merge, I believe, is that one, where they get kind of jungled up with Cuban intelligence, and of course the Soviets. These early 80s books are all pre-fall of the Soviet Union, so the KGB is a primary bad guy in a lot of these. And also, like as I said a few minutes ago, they fought the KGB directly or KGB sponsored forces, but also Nazis in many cases. Nazis who had been hiding in South America or were still hiding in Europe under assumed names as part of the Odessa network, which helped a lot of Nazis. It was a real life thing that helped a lot of Nazis escape. And after World War II, you see also Frederick Forsyth's novel, The Holcroft Covenant. So if you like a bigger team with a wider variety of missions, Phoenix Force is going to kind of be your thing. Now, the special case, the tangential case, the SOBs, the Soldiers of Barabbas.
Like, subscribe, repost, share everywhere. To see what else we're up to, visit xynobooks.com, xenobooks.com.